Welcome, Internet friends, to Podcast with a K, episode numero 3,
Trace.
however you want to count it. I'm your host, Christian Mishka, with a K. That's Christian with a K. And this is co-host Steven Laczko, joining me
Welcome.
yet again to talk about some real things and some real things. And the real things we'll start with first. So we're going to be talking about brain-computer interfaces.
Yes.
So Elon Musk, owner of Neuralink Technologies, created or had this blog post, I think it was last week, where they embedded their Neuralink technology into a monkey. And it played this game called Mind Pong, and that's just, it completely blew my mind when I saw it. I was like, what the heck is happening here? And from their last report, which I think was like at the end of last year, where they were showing some like blipping sounds from receiving the signals of a pig's brain, I was like, that's a huge leap, and it's just making me wonder how fast this technology is going. So we're gonna kind of be a bit more speculative, like what can this technology provide us as people, maybe from the computer science perspective, maybe from just like a health perspective. And we're not going to get super technical. We're just going to talk about it as we are. So yeah,
Heck yeah.
what are your first thoughts about this technology?
My first thoughts are well, I want to. Okay, my first thoughts are that we are living in the future. We are living in a science fiction book. We are living in a science fiction novel. In so many ways, VR has come a ridiculous amount in like 5 years. It's ludicrous.
Yeah.
And so is brain machine interfaces. This stuff is insane. And actually, brain machine interfaces and VR are linked. And maybe we'll get to that.
This is true.
Neuralinked, if you would. Anyway, so my thoughts are that this technology is astounding and absolutely has every possibility of changing society, just like smartphones did.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I say change in every sense of the word, good and bad.
Yeah.
So I do want to get to stuff about ethics and stuff as well, and security.
Mm-hmm.
First, I want to just explain the monkey thing,
Yep.
because I'm sure many people haven't seen that. There was this demonstration where Neuralink put a Neuralink in a monkey's brain, and that's this little device that gets surgically, like tiny, itsy bitsy little wires get surgically implanted into different regions in the brain, and they can read your brain activity with it, and it transmits wirelessly. What this monkey was able to do was, before they put the Neuralink in, or before they activated it, they had him play this game where he moved this joystick around, and it moved a little dot, and he had to like capture another dot with his dot. So basically, he just had to move his dot around,
Yep.
and he got a treat for it. Over time, they recorded what they got from his brain as he was moving the joystick around. So they got what it looks like in his brain for him to play the game. Then they took the controller away. And the monkey continued to play the game using the Neuralink just by thinking about playing the game. In fact, they gave him the joystick still, but they unplugged it so that he would be using the same pathways. Um, he didn't even need to, it didn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure he could pretty easily learn to do it anyway, even without the joystick. And humans certainly could. There's no doubt about that. So it's literally science fiction.
Yep.
It's controlling an interface, a computer, with your mind.
Yeah. And to be a little bit more technical about what's going on there is the Neuralink is just a device. It's implanted into the skull. It's flush with the skull, I believe, and it has a bunch of little like wires, like brain safe wires that kind of span out into a certain area of the brain. And for the monkey, I think they put it near his I forget the regions of the brain, but near where like the motor cortex is, right? So that it could get capture what they would hope would capture more useful information about movement. And yes, they did use the joystick. That was just a game that the monkey had already been playing. It was like, oh, move the joystick, get my treat. It's basically a game, video game, right? Then they used machine learning technologies, which probably also involve some sort of neural network, which is kind of like its own thing in itself. It's
That's
like,
funny.
oh, we're using we're mapping a computer neural network to an actual neural network's inputs to get these outputs. Um,
That's crazy to think about. Okay, go
yeah,
ahead.
and then so it's almost like there's a link between the real neural network and the computer that's another neural network. But they took away what they did originally is they unplugged the controller, so the monkey did still have that tactile feedback, but the controls were completely wirelessly, um, done wirelessly, and then eventually I don't know if it said in the video how much time had passed, but there was a point where he stopped using the controller and was
Uh,
just he just had his hands on the thing that was giving him food and then was
that's
controlling it with his brain.
didn't
So,
even need it.
yep, completely
S-
crazy.
So let's think about just short-term possibilities with this first off. So, um, what do you think is the first commercial product, the first possibility with this technology for the general public? What do you think the first thing could be?
So, I mean, I know Elon has talked about wanting to help in healthcare as like the first, I guess commercial is the right word. I don't know, use of it, but helping people who can't control their hands, or who are paralyzed, and can't move. They can use the brain interface to control input devices on computers. So they could text to speech or just use the internet, and that would be a very helpful and first use case of this technology.
For sure. I think that's a great example of the good that this is going to be able to do. Like our
Hmm.
bodies are pretty fragile. In the end, they're relatively fragile, and we got a couple wires in here that do everything for us. And if that goes, then your control goes, and it's that's not easy. But with this kind of technology, it grants a lot of hope. I think.
Hmm.
I mean, there's already prosthetics out there, sure, but not quite like this. Not with the backing behind it and the attention they've put into the actual control of the thing.
Hmm.
Because there's been a lot of robotics going on into prosthetics and and certain things where they like track the muscles of the arm that used to be there. Say if my arm was cut off, they
Hmm.
could track the impulses of the muscles. But now they can just use your brain straight up, and I think that's much more powerful. There's a lot of possibility here.
Yeah, and there's definitely a question of like the brain is. Oh goodness, my background thing went away again. Um, Connecting to the brain, which is something that we don't even understand ourselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's it's kind of mind-boggling that you're able to pull that specific of a piece of information from it. Um, like, oh, you're using these parts of the brain to control this input. Um, and I don't know. I guess it's one of the beauties of how our brains work. It's just like your neural networks are constantly remapping and reworking themselves, and they'll just your brain will kind of work in tandem with whatever technology is there to get it to do the thing that it wants. Like prior to Neuralink, there's been technology that's been done towards um, getting hand movement from purely from brain signals, um, from on human subjects, and that involved a lot of like reworking neural pathways. But yeah, it's crazy.
So what I was just thinking,
Hmm.
when we were talking about the monkey example,
Hmm.
okay, controlling a computer with his mind, my immediate thought was that's going to be the future of smartphones.
Yeah.
Like the thing is it's a direct link. Like we've already proven that we can control a cursor on the screen
Hmm.
intuitively with the Neuralink, and a monkey could do it.
Yeah.
We can do that better, pretty sure.
Yeah.
So our phones, I mean, we might as well have them strapped to our arms or whatever, like here, or like here maybe if we have like one of Tony Stark's freaking inventions with like a hologram,
Hmm.
and we just look around and we just think about what we want to do. Oh, opens up the browser and I can go to Twitter and scroll through a little, and switch to Discord here. That as I'm saying this, it's like maybe I'm exaggerating, but I'm not. I'm really, except the hologram. I'm exaggerating about the hologram, but I'm not exaggerating about this. This is feasible now.
Yep.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Uh,
So let's look into what do you think this has application in terms of jobs, in terms of work, in terms of the science behind it? You think you were talking about, you mentioned computer science in relation to this. So what do you think the opportunities are? What do you think opportunities present themselves with this technology?
Sure. So, I mean, these kind of first demonstrations of it are very input output is pretty direct, and you're copying the same kind of behaviors. So you're turning that movement into the same kind of movement. So you're directly controlling something the same way you would before, just without your physical interaction with it. But I imagine as the technology advances, they're going to be able to map things that are less one-to-one. So instead of like, oh, I am moving my mouse around the screen, I am typing in these buttons without just, hands-free looking at it, it'll be more like, oh, I'm thinking these thoughts and those are turning into words. Instead of like, I'm moving to click all the buttons, it'll just be like, I'm thinking a phrase, I'm in typing brain mode, and then it's coming onto the screen. Um, so kind of like speech to text, but then it would be like thought to text, I guess.
Thought to text.
Yes.
And what comes to mind about that is that we can have thought to action as well. There's nothing keeping us from jumping there as well.
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
It can get even more abstract.
Yeah, like, okay, thought to executable, run Discord, like mapping those inputs, definitely.
You don't even need to, click, okay, I want to click the home button now. Oh, click Discord.
It's
It
just
just
like,
knows.
I got a notification. I felt the vibration. Boom, Discord is now the thing that's on my screen because that's immediately where my brain goes. Oh, somebody sent me a message on whatever. It's right there. I'm like, oh, I had this random thought. Wanted to Google that. It's up there already. Now that definitely poses issues of like concentration,
Yes.
and yeah, definitely concentration and being able to remain focused because of all the things that our brains are bouncing around.
hmm I do want to get to that in a second.
Hmm.
The whole look at mental health, because that is a big subject here as well. But okay. So for those who don't know, uh, there's been a sort of breakthrough in terms of AI technology. It's called GPT-3. It is this amazing piece of software that cost somewhere near $5 million to train. It's a neural network, so like a quote unquote fake brain is the least most imprecise way of describing it. But it's a very smart little brain. You can tell it to write a line of code and it will write the correct line of code. For instance, it can also make sentences, write articles. It can do a lot of things. My point is, if we gotten enough information from people using the Neuralink and other similar types of technology, what if we trained a model like GPT-3 on that?
Hmm.
It would allow it to learn from brain patterns and assess what you wanted to do next. So
Hmm.
picture this. We
Hmm.
spend 5 years as a society taking out our phones, looking at Discord, thinking, oh, I want to look at Discord. Look at Discord. It opens using the Neuralink. It saves this information, it saves these patterns, these brain patterns. Throw it into GPT-3. You have millions of people's data. You throw it into GPT-3, it learns from it. You're done. You have the next era of technology where you can think of doing something and it does it. GPT-3 is powerful enough to do that, I'm pretty sure. They just have to format it in the right way.
Yeah, I do not doubt that. That's something to think about. Also, what implications that have because if that like the GPT-3 model is a predictive model, it has input and it has output, it looks at previous patterns to generate new patterns. If that technology, if that model is put into the wrong hands, then they can I guess the assumptions would be that it could be used to predict what you're going to do. Not just your thought patterns, not just how you're using the apps you're using, but literally what you're going to do. And that, like, oh, people are more likely to buy these products if these things, if these contexts or if these brain patterns are happening. So it turns on a whole new method of marketing that makes it really hard to combat, I would say, because it's neural pathways at that point.
Yeah, agreed. So yeah, everything I was saying was on the based on the premise of people would be willing to
To have
give
that
away
data.
their very brain patterns as data to be sent in, even if it's anonymous.
Hmm.
It's
I don't know if you could say it's anonymous. Who knows, like, how unique our brain patterns are? Like, it could be its own thumbprint to a degree. I don't know.
that's fair. Honestly, it's hard to say. But well, here's the thing: the Neuralink, it only has so many wires,
Yeah.
and they can only detect so much.
Yeah.
So I doubt you could identify a person with those brain patterns.
Maybe.
But still, even if that's true, it still feels dangerous. We're entering into a new era of technology, and that brings these kinds of dangers with them. Just like when we got phones. I mean, the government didn't even want us to have encryption on our websites, and now you don't do almost anything without encryption on the internet. No one does.
True.
So these little jumps ahead in technology, and this is not a little one, have fairly big implications. So yeah, the ad market, you bet they're going to eat this up. There's no way they're not going to try. And are
Yeah.
we going to stop them?
Well,
Us as a society haven't so far.
right. And so far, we've only been talking about what we can control, right? We haven't talked about the opposite, which is a future plan for this kind of technology where we can actually send signals to our brain from the device, so from the internet. So, I mean,
Hmm.
I saw this in the chat. um, Ryora said, "Wait, would phantom vibrations in your phone, if your phone was hooked up to your brain?" It's like, yeah, you could theoretically have your brain being the output device. So you, I don't know how that would be mapped. Like, it could be mapped to like, oh, I actually hear this sound or feel this vibration in this part of my body, or
Mm-hmm.
it could be mapped to like something more generic, like, oh, I just have the feeling that I have a notification. I don't know where it came from. Like, I've seen this on a YouTube video where, I don't know if I'll be able to find the link, but this guy tried this new thing where basically he put different sensors on his back and mapped them to the stock market prices. And he was trying, so basically he would feel, it's like stimulation on different parts of his back. And after using it for a couple months, he was able to just feel how well the stock market was doing based off of that. Like, his brain recreated information there, like, used that information in its own way. So I imagine we would be
Whoa.
able to do the same thing um, with this, because it's just like, okay, the brain is
Oh.
going to use these inputs in its own way. It's like, oh, this signal means I have a notification in Discord. So all of a sudden you're just like, oh, I have a notification on Discord. It's just in my thoughts.
Mhm.
It's a new input. It's not like tactile touching. It's not like visual. It's not like sound. It's just a new sensation, I guess.
There's a new way of living. Seriously.
Yeah, right.
So would that level of marketing be necessarily bad, though, from Ryori and chat?
Oh, goodness.
So, well, there are people on both sides of this argument, and there's already a lot of arguing about the market as it is now, like about people not wanting to be tracked. Like there are targeted ads now, right? And they
Hmm.
track where you go and they direct ads at you, so you're more likely to buy them. I don't have a huge issue with that, um, but people do.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people who do, and it's fair. I have nothing against that. And so to have them be reading your thoughts practically is a lot more invasive. So is it bad? That's an argument that we probably don't have time to get into. Is
Hmm.
are people going to be upset about it? Yeah.
Yeah. And I would imagine that this technology wouldn't go to the depths that the raw inputs are shared publicly, but rather just the endpoints that they create for those inputs. I would imagine that like Neuralink is going to be pretty consistent about how it's set up. That's not to say that hackers won't try to get in or anything.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah.
Yeah. So I want to move on to another topic here that is very important to me in terms of the brain-machine interface, uh, which is health
Hmm.
and mental health
Yep.
specifically. So, what do you think the implications are for this kind of technology on mental health?
Sure. I mean, I think there's two sides to the coin. Just like the internet and computers have shown us, it's a technology, it's a tool. We use it, right, and we can abuse it.
Hmm.
Same thing with this new piece of technology. We can use it, and we can use it in a good way, or we can abuse it. And I'd heard on a podcast with Joe Rogan and Elon Musk talking about some of the uses of potential uses of Neuralink, and like one of them was you could just tell your Neuralink to calm your nerves, to like ease your stress, potentially, right? That's a
Hmm.
future idea they have. It's just make you more relaxed, not be depressed, right? Just feel better, and they could just input signals into those parts of your brain to do that. And that's like whoa, that's amazing. But that also means like, oh, you can just give yourself a hit of dopamine whenever you want, without phones are already instant access to that, but this is even more direct. So
Hmm.
it's going to be useful, um, but it can be abused. So the question becomes like, where do you put the control of this technology? Like, do you put it in the hands of the user? They're just like, oh, I want to feel better. No, I want to feel better. I want to feel better, right? Get
Right.
into some negative or positive feedback loops where they just keep it's almost like they could become dependent on the Neuralink. Or
100%.
do you take this technology, you lock it down to some degree, like does just like medication, affects our physiology, and there's certain regulations for how much is allowed to be prescribed and that kind of thing. So it's like, are we going to treat it the same way? We're affecting those same emotions, those same essentially the same neural pathways, just directly instead of indirectly. Um,
Hmm.
so do you have some sort of portal interface where doctors can tap into your brain and control certain aspects that affect your mood?
Mm.
I mean, I imagine that those conversations will be happening, and I think that would be one way to protect against people from just abusing it themselves. And that's
Yeah.
from specifically from a medical standpoint. This isn't talking about like how it makes the internet super accessible to people, so how would they solve that problem?
Right. That is a different issue, and it is an issue.
Yeah.
Um, but you're right, Ryora. It does sound very freaky to be
Yeah.
able to alter your conscious experience so easily with potentially the touch of a button. I do not think people should have that power.
Yeah. I
Period. Now there's some libertarians that will disagree with me
mhm.
starkly on that, I'm sure.
Mhm.
But I just don't believe, given what we've seen with phones and the internet and the information age in general,
Mhm.
we can't be trusted with that sort of power. Now, for medical purposes, like, it's amazing, right?
Yeah.
But for recreational purposes, it's just that would be too easy, too addictive. It'd just be effortless. You would
Yeah.
get addicted. There's no way you would not get, if you're pumping dopamine, which is the drug that gets you addicted to things.
Mhm.
That's going to happen. So it's
Yeah.
kind of a scary situation.
I don't know. It's weird. I'd almost I'm very capitalist, free market kind of a thing, kind of a person, and I almost say like in regards to like the dopamine uh, aspect, I almost would say let the people do what they want if they can. Granted, it should be under whatever regulations come with the technology that's being provided, right? Let the people do what they want. I would want to draw the line at where it becomes harmful. Now, you'd have to quantify that though, right? Like, do you quantify too much dopamine and an addiction as harmful? Then I guess yeah, that probably makes sense. But that's not where my brain went immediately. It went immediately to like, oh, the opposite. What if I make people feel bad? Like, what if I want to feel more depressed? That's kind of a weird thing to say, but people could have that control over themselves, and that's definitely unhealthy. Um,
Here's the thing. I don't think putting that power in somebody's hands just without any oversight or anything. will make anyone healthier. I mean, there will be some people who will use it responsibly, for sure. But it's just like phones. It's too easy. It's too easy to get addicted to a phone. You have to
Right.
carry it around in your pocket. But this is talking about like your brain and just having direct access, and it's just, yeah. I'm repeating myself now, but
Yeah, I think I definitely understand this point, but I think where I lie is um, let people be people. If they make bad choices, they're making bad choices. I don't want regulations over making bad choices. I would rather have regulations over making detrimental choices. So whether or not we can prove that that line is detrimental, then that would be where my stance would lie. But yeah, um,
my stance is a little different from that. I'm more of a I'm a meditating boy. I love that stuff. I think it's like the healthiest you can be if you can get into meditation. Gives you control over your brain, but the point is that it's natural control, and clearly some people have the chemical misbalances, and they need drugs to correct these things, or a Neuralink potentially to correct these things. But if you don't, I think manually doing it like this is not the way nature intends, and I don't think it's healthy. It's a manual artificial thing that, just like a mixture of drugs, is a very sensitive thing to be ingesting.
hmm
Psychologists go through many mixtures of drugs before they get it right with a lot of patients. You can probably really mess yourself up if you had complete access to a Neuralink. And this ties in right with Ryor's question here in chat. Do you guys think there's a difference between getting dopamine from an actual activity than just getting it blasted into your brain? So I have a strong opinion on this. I think you can guess what it is.
sure.
Yes,
I
120%.
if the question is asking what is it, does it feel different or is it different? I think they're different answers. So I think the answer to does it feel different, the answer would be initially no, but because you have different control over it, the answer would be yes. Now there are questions of would you become like destimulated to it because you have like it in its purest form. Um, but yeah, no, I think it's definitely very different because if you look at society or humans from a very natural perspective, dopamine is produced when we achieve things, when we accomplish things, um, and it's to encourage us to continue to do the things that it's like, oh well, we had to put in work to do this thing, but we get rewarded for it. It's an internal process that's rewarding. Um, with the age of the internet and phones, and also the fact that we're doing less manual work, that kind of dopamine is just more accessible, and we get it through different avenues. So instead of getting it from putting work into physical thing and like effort, um, we get it from oh, you know, cat videos and likes. Like, oh my goodness, I got another like. I got 100 likes. I got people are watching this. And we get it from very unnatural sources, and those are definitely a lot more frequent and a lot more accessible to us than the more manual ones. If you take it to the next level, we've got this Neuralink technology, and if you can just input it into your brain directly, um, there's you don't even have to go the route of I have to receive messages, I have to receive likes. It's just there. It is at your fingertips still, but it's way more immediate.
Mm-hmm. Rayor has another question here. Do you think that the process of doing something and getting rewarded for it has some intrinsic value?
Hmm.
I'm gonna take this one.
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily. I believe it has practical value. There's another term I'm forgetting for practical value. But
Instrumental.
instrumental value.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Dopamine. Your brain works in a certain way for a reason, and there's different functions going on in your brain. Like it likes sleep. It likes routine. Um, it likes these different things, and these processes work together, and dopamine is part of those processes. And when you screw with a process like that, here's the thing: you're changing dopamine. It's like, okay, is that inherently bad? No. But you're not changing serotonin necessarily. You're not changing 12 other chemicals that change at the same time when you accomplish something. There's so much complexity to the brain that it would be like, sticking a wrench into like a piece of clockwork and trying to fix it that way. We don't know what we're doing with the brain.
Mm-hmm.
You'll learn that if you go to a psychologist and they try to treat you. Now, no hate on psychologists, but they just have to go through this process where they try different drugs out and see what works, and eventually, most often ends up working. But it's not easy, and it needs to be very carefully monitored. You get too much of one drug, you're suicidal. Like, it's dangerous, and it is. These drugs are given out by professionals who know their craft, hopefully. Unlike general practitioners who don't know as much about this, but give them out anyway. I don't know why. So yes, the process of doing something and getting rewarded for it is inherently different in an instrumental way. Has a lot of value. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, I mean, if we want to take it to the next level, real quick, we're talking about fine-tuning all these things to get your physiological balance correct, whatever that means, so that you don't feel depressed, you don't feel, out of place.
Just working well.
Yeah, so you're human. It begs the question of, at what point are artificial intelligence programs going to be dictating those values? Or, I mean, I guess it would start with suggesting them, but then I'm guessing it's going to go on to dictating them. Because this technology is going to opens up so many doors for researchers. It opens up so many doors for so many fields of interest, right? Like, doctors are going to have so much more information about what your body is doing, that I imagine, like, they're not going to be able to inspect these things themselves. So they're going to need neural technologies or machine learning technologies to extract the information and present it in some way that's useful to these professions. But yeah, we did want to talk about computer science too a little bit, but there's a lot.
We're pretty far in.
We are pretty far in.
Yeah.
I'll just throw out a random idea. Maybe we can come back to it another time.
Okay.
So, I mean, we're controlling things with our brains. What about creating content with our brains? What about the neural networks are figuring out how to do computer code with our brains? We just think of what we want to be coded. We think about the output, and it creates the code, right? Like, oh, I want a website that does this, and then it's just like, oh, there's your code that does the thing. And then, yeah.
That's the thing with combining this technology with something like GPT-3.
Yeah.
Is that is now feasible.
Yeah.
Bonkers. Again, we live in a sci-fi novel.
We really do. Oh, wait.
Oh my goodness.
Somebody recently said there was it was a quote. I forget who it was by, and I forget the quote, which is not great. Do you know what I'm talking about? About science and fantasy?
Yes, science and magic.
Yeah.
At a certain level, sufficiently advanced science becomes indistinguishable from magic.
Mm-hmm.
And if I thought about a web app I wanted, and maybe I drew it out, whatever, but I thought about it real hard, and I clicked build, and it made it, that is just straight up magic. Like, what's the difference? Sure, we're using some mechanical process to do it. Mechanical. It's not even mechanical. We're plugging it, if we use GPT-3, this AI, we're plugging it into this magic box, and it's spitting out more magic. It's spitting out data.
Yeah.
We're living in fantasy times. That's what we're living in. It's not sci-fi anymore. It's fantasy.
Yeah, and I think you could take the average Joe and ask them about how computers work, and they might know, oh, it uses circuit boards, it uses this stuff, but it's pretty much magic to them. But you ask like a computer scientist or engineer who's, dealt with this stuff, and they know like, oh yeah, I know how it works. If I was stranded on an island, maybe I couldn't recreate it, maybe I could, or at least I'd know where to start. But yeah, there's definitely that knowledge gap that makes something seem like magic versus science.
For sure.
But yeah, I guess we should be moving on to the next segment
Next
of the
segment here, indeed.
podcast.
Mm-hmm.
We got to prepare for the late night sock talk by changing our backgrounds.
Mm-hmm.
Are we doing
I
this in
am
sync
prepared.
or are we doing this?
Sure, let's do it in sync. You
Alrighty,
ready?
ready?
3, 2,
2,
1,
1, go.
go.
Mine is backwards on the screen. This is so sad.
I see it. I can
Okay.
see it straight.
You see it straight.
Oh, it's flipped.
Yes,
We're
it is.
flipped. Oh.
No, just me, because it's my facing camera. Actually, maybe I can change that in the settings.
You can probably flip it around.
Then I'll be mirrored, opposite of mirrored.
For some reason, the entire video is mirrored. Oh, no, it's not.
No, I don't think.
Oh, very strange. Okay, I see now.
I don't see the settings for it.
That's great. I recognize that background. For those who have fallen into the VTuber rabbit hole, you'll recognize it too.
I'll just give
That
it
is
a
an
couple
excellent
seconds.
song right there. Look up that song. It says Pop on Rocks. Look up that song. It's sick. Anyway, our next segment. Late
Oh,
Night Sock
did
Talk.
not mean to
Ah! There it is. Very good. Very good. So we have something today that's... It actually falls right in line with what we've been talking about, which is technology to the point of fantasy. And I actually have it here with me today. This is different from the usual late night sock talk, where I don't usually have like something to show, but I do have it right here, and it's this.
Mm.
Now, what is it? What is it, Christian?
It is. I think most people would call that a watch.
Yes, yes. Now, what do watches do? They tell.
They tell you the hour of the day.
Right, they tell you time.
Oh, well, I mean, if you want to go that
course.
generic.
I mean,
Who asks what time it is? They ask what hour is it, right?
every day? Like, I only want to know what the hour is. But
Yeah.
point is that it tells you the time. That is not what this watch does. This
Oh.
watch tells you space. It tells
My
you the space.
What?
Yeah.
Is this new?
This was released by a Switzerland-based watchmaking company.
Mm-hmm.
Casio picked it up and created a cheap knockoff, and that's what I have here.
Wow.
So these are devices that actually tell you, instead of telling you the time, it tells you the space. Now, Christian, you're a smart guy. Okay, I know you can do this. What exactly do I mean by it tells you the space? Like for instance, if you were to take this watch and look at it, what would you be expecting to see?
I mean, with this preconception of what it's telling me,
Yeah,
I would expect it to show me exactly where I am.
precisely. Now, see, that's the thing. These things are so intuitive. That's why I love them so much. You look at it.
I have a
And-
question.
Yeah.
Because typically, old time watches tell you time, but time is relative to whatever point was set in history. So is this relative to some point as well?
This is relative to the Earth.
Okay.
Now, it can be relative to anything, but it's specifically relative to Switzerland, a specific radio tower in Switzerland. So it gives you coordinates based on that. They wanted to keep that like closed source. They wanted to have their own coordinate system so that you had to buy the watch. It's kind of unfortunate, but they use their own coordinate system based on their own HQ.
Okay.
And this knockoff also uses that coordinate system.
Okay.
So it tells you exactly where you are in the world at any time. Not using GPS. Forget GPS. It uses the property of space itself.
Oh.
Inside here is a tiny, minuscule wormhole. If you were to take the face off, you'd see right through to their HQ. Like it'd be like Portal, like the game Portal. You'd see right inside, and you'd see, some scientists maybe staring back at you. You'd probably see some technology monitoring the wormhole and keeping it going. But they have thousands of these holes at their HQ, locked in a safe and kept safe. So you always know where you are. But not only that, and here's the crazy part. The original space watches actually let you alter the location of that wormhole.
Oh. Which side? Your side or their side?
Their side.
Oh. Is that
So
legal?
think of it like jailbreaking an iPhone.
Okay. Just with wormholes.
Right. Sure.
Yeah.
Pretty easy analogy there.
Yeah.
So you take the front case off, and normally it closes the wormhole when you do that. But if you go on Game FAQ, they do have a tutorial on how to take it off without closing the wormhole, and the specific instructions on how to change the location of the other end. Now, Christian, have you ever been sitting on the toilet? You run out of toilet paper, right? And you're like, gosh, this room's awful. I hate it here. I wish it didn't exist. It smells. There's too much wallpaper. I want to get out of here.
Yeah.
You've experienced that, right?
Yeah, multiple times.
Right. Here's the thing. You run out of toilet paper. Right?
Yeah.
That's happened to all of us. The best of us. Michael Jordan has run out of toilet paper before. This will solve your problem.
The jailbreak version will solve your problem.
The jailbreak version will solve your problem. You can save different places to send this wormhole. Oh. And you pull out your watch and you're like, right here. And you just pull it through. And you have toilet paper in your hand.
Oh, I thought you were going a different route. I'm so glad you went this route. Because I was like, whoa, you're going to choose where to send this stuff? But never mind. That makes more sense.
Okay. That's actually a brilliant point, is that you can send things to other places as well. There's no limit to the applications of this thing.
Yes.
It's amazing technology.
Now, it does beg the question how wormholes travel. You just push the button and it goes, or does it have to like slowly move there? So is there some sort of like, can you watch it move?
So, depending on how well you tune the wormhole, there is some fine tuning to do. You will actually watch as the wormhole gets shorter as you get closer to fine tuning it. So think of space like this piece of paper, and you have a wormhole here, you have a wormhole here, and they're connected. Well, what that means is actually that it's bent like this, and you have something like a tube going through it to reach the other side. Does that make any sense? You go through this side of the tube, and you come out on this side of the tube.
Crystal clear.
When you fine-tune the wormhole, it closes. And it becomes instant teleportation. Now, say you want to time it, say you don't want to take the time to fine-tune it. It takes considerable amount of time. It can take up to 4 years to fine-tune it. You can just save it exactly like this. So it has a bit of a distance, and you just wait for it to come through. So say you set up a wormhole underneath a pack of toilet paper. You set it off, and, it takes an extra 2 weeks. But you have it.
Right.
You don't have to leave the bathroom to get the toilet paper. Like, again, we are living in a sci-fi book.
I'm starting to understand the applications of this technology. Essentially, the future in store for us is we're going to be storing every single one of our belongings in some storage unit on the other side in Singapore, right? Is that what you said?
Yes.
And then,
I said before, but that's fine. Before the stream. That's okay.
Oh, sorry.
Just for everyone, yeah. We're storing all of our belongings in Singapore. We already are, but I think everyone else will as well.
Right. And then where we live, it will just be like a single room, maybe 2 rooms. And we're just like, oh, I need the thing. Yes, got my thing. I need the other thing. and then you can just dial it around to move your wormhole into your. It's like the claw game where it just like the claw chooses who will come and who will go, and then it chooses your toilet paper, and then you're like, yes.
Exactly.
That is an amazing future.
So
Um,
you're a smart man. I knew you'd get it. Like, these are the implications we're talking about. Like,
it,
Neuralink, it's cool, but can we store all of our belongings in Singapore with the Neuralink? Nope.
Not unless you move there, but that's different.
That's very
Now,
different.
we have time watches. There's these space watches that you're telling us about. It begs a couple more questions, though, right? Like, what about smell watches and light
Mm.
watches?
Mm-hmm.
Is color the same? I don't know. Color watch might be a different thing than light watch.
Mm-hmm.
But these other properties of the universe, there's the gravity watch too.
Oh,
Um,
for sure.
that
That
are
one, yeah.
all very useful pieces of technology that either have been created or are still in the concept phase. Which of
Mm-hmm.
those is the most useful, do you think?
The most useful is probably the smell watch.
Right.
Is
That's what I
probably,
was
and
thinking.
here's why.
Yeah.
Is that we communicate not only with our vocal utterances, we have throughout history, but even before history began, we've communicated through pheromones and through smell.
This is
And
true.
so, say you want to communicate to someone on the other side of the world. You got your wormhole watch, and it's like, hey, hey, and like, okay, you didn't fine tune your wormhole, and it's 70 feet long.
Mm-hmm.
They're not going to hear you. But say you have a smell-o-vision watch. The concept designs I've seen of this. There are patents out there already. It's coming. The patents out there show that they can instantly communicate smells no matter where you are. It's using some kind of alternate technology. I think it's dimensional technology. Don't quote me on that. I think it's dimensional. Instantly transfer smells to somebody. And so me and Christian here could just chat like this, and it would just be instant. We could talk faster than our thoughts, practically faster than we
Yes.
could speak. That's for sure. And by the way, I do. If you have any experience with the Space Watch, or even have some insider information on the Smell-O-Vision watch, please let us know in the chat. We'd love to hear from you.
Yeah. It would be very
Mm-hmm.
useful.
Yeah. So, what are you most excited for? Which watch?
I mean, the smell-o-vision watch is definitely the one that piqued my interest first. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I
Of
think one
course.
of the reasons of that was not communicating with other people, but communicating with dogs because they use smell to the extreme.
Mm-hmm.
So just being able to communicate with my dog on his level would be probably the most useful piece of information I could have. On
Absolutely.
a less sentimental note, I think the gravity watch would be very useful. Sometimes it's just really hard to reach things that are in high up places, or you don't want to touch the floor. Just use the gravity watch; it pulls it up towards you.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you're not getting enough out of this hug from one person, and you're just like, "Come on, man!" And then you just up the gravity. It just becomes magnetic. Um,
Dude, I
some
never
people
thought of
you
that.
might
That's
not want
great.
to spend time with. You turn the gravity the other way, you become negative mass, whoosh, they go away.
You know what's funny? You know what's a joke?
What?
That we still have restraining orders instead of these watches.
Yeah.
What does a restraining order do? It's a piece of paper, like this one. This
Mm-hmm.
is a piece of paper, right? Piece of paper. Useless. This is not going to keep me. This piece of paper is not going to keep me from hugging Christian. It won't. Ever. I could destroy this with my hands. The gravity watch. You're right. That's a great use case of that.
It is.
Now, Ryora
If
had a
oh
comment.
yes.
He brought up something. My only question is how the wormhole is made with earthworms. And that is a fantastic point. How is the wormhole made? Now, the wormhole is made with an actual physical substance that they source from North Korea. Christian, what is that substance?
I mean, I think Ryuria answered the question. It's with earthworms. And that's
Mm-hmm.
the secret recipe. They combine the earthworms with another substance from the dirt that they live in their habitat, right? So it's some kind of mineral. They don't disclose which mineral it is. So there's like probably about 52 billion that people need to try out to actually get the combination right that they are using. Um, but they infuse this mineral into the earthworms, and when it's infused in a way that's unnatural, the earthworms start to emit these wormholes. And it's not the same kind of wormhole that they normally produce, which is just a hole in the dirt, but it's actually a ripple in the space-time continuum. And they can harvest them after they've traveled through this substance, and they can harvest the wormholes just like that.
So it's actually
it is a
they're actually.
there
Go
is
ahead.
a very important question that this raises as to the ethical treatment of these earthworms and whether or not they're getting
Mm-hmm.
paid well enough. Um, it also
Mm-hmm.
depends on where they're being made, but that's a whole other story.
I couldn't agree more. Yeah, there are definitely ethical issues here. Are the earthworms getting paid enough? Do they have life insurance? I've heard they don't get life insurance. I've heard
Yeah,
they're just paid and they don't even support their well being. Car insurance. That's expensive. For earthworms, that's a racial issue I don't think we need to get into right now.
yeah,
That's for another talk. But thank you, Ryora, for bringing that up. So yes, it is actually earthworms who cultivate these wormholes
yes.
and are then cultivated by the Switzerland company, exported from North Korea, and that's how these watches are made.
There you go.
Yeah,
I
fantastic.
I
Thanks
think
for chatting about that,
yes,
Christian.
absolutely. I think that brings this segment to a close.
Absolutely. And we do have one more segment. This might be my favorite segment. They're all my favorite, really, though. That is, what's your world?
What is your world? Where we ask the question, "What's your world?" Gets you every time. It
Yes,
hits.
every time. I just can't even.
I feel like I need a different background for this segment.
Me too. You ready?
I'm going to just pick a default one because I don't. Did you pick one?
I'm ready.
Okay. This one looks fun. No, this one looks fun.
3, 2, 1, go! I'm in
Whoa. We're
space!
both in space.
Wow.
This space is good.
Different space.
Different
That's
space.
fantastic. Who asked first last time?
I actually don't remember.
I think you asked me last time. I think I did the turtle last time.
Yes, you're
First.
right. You're right. You're right.
Yes. Christian, I would love to ask you a question. No pressure.
Yes. Yes.
If
Ask
you don't
away.
want to say no, just say no. But I
If
just
I
want to ask
don't
you.
want to say no, say no.
If you
Okay.
want to say no. Christian,
Yes.
what's your
Steven.
world?
Well, you know what my world is, Stephen?
What is it?
My world is full of color. All right? My world has more colors than you can count. In fact, the color is non-enumerable. It's it's in a spectrum that goes beyond something you can imagine, okay? It's not like the light electromagnetic spectrum here on Earth, right? That's boring, that's lame, okay? That's limited. This color, color in this world is multi-dimensional. We're not talking about a single range. We're talking about 4D tesseract cubes needing to be used to describe what this color sensation is like, okay? The beings in this universe experience color in a way like no other being, okay? And the color is so fundamental to how these beings operate. In fact, many of their organs are formed out of this substance that is color. And the color isn't even a physical object. You can't touch it. You can see it, right? Using your four-dimensional eyes, you can see it.
Hmm.
But it's not physical. So these beings, which are actually in 3D space, have 4D aspects to them in their three-dimensional bodies. And as they walk around, they can walk around in 3D space like humans, but they can also walk around in 4D space, and it completely shifts their color spectrum to 3D viewers. So if you visit one of these beings, which I'll call the cremonauts, if you visit a cremonaut, you can see their 3D form, and you can see one slice of their color form, okay? But you'll never get to experience how they experience one another, because they're actually four-dimensional beings. And when a cremonaut meets a cremonaut, they can understand more than just a slice of their color. they can understand a four-dimensional face of the color of the other being. And this is very important because they can control how they walk in four dimensions. When they're interacting with three-dimensional people like us, they can actually choose to show themselves in a way that we can't choose to show ourselves. Like it's almost like a filter or a mask, right? Like I can pretend to be someone else in person in physical 3D space with other people, but I'm still gonna look pretty much like me. They can just walk in four-dimensional space without moving in 3D space, and they're a different person. Like, imagine, um, imagine from your favorite movie, the people who can shapeshift, right? It's like that, except you didn't even see the transition happen. They have the full spectrum of every single human being in their 4D space. But beyond that, they also have the full spectrum of anything that can occupy the humanoid form. Actually, it goes beyond humanoid forms. They can become any 3D object. So you can hardly even tell as a human whether or not a Cremonaut is in your presence because it could just look like a 3D object. And this is all because of the fundamental unit of this universe, which is that four-dimensional color. And because it exists in four dimensions, there's the three dimensions that, like, there's regular color spectrum, then there's, like, the physical, properties, and then there's this other attribute that has to do with, like, the mass of the color, even though it's not physical, that allows the 3D object to have negative space. So, inside here, the object doesn't exist, but as it morphs into something else, it becomes a different shape and has, different properties to it. So
Were those all Cremonauts?
those, I'm not supposed to talk about whether or not I have found a Cremonaut.
Okay. Sorry.
Yeah. I will say, once you find one and you know you have one, you better treat it like it's a god because it will just destroy you if you don't.
Oh,
Um,
it's good
yeah.
to know.
So Cremonauts are very emotional beings because they experience this color, right? Um, and it just gives you a really nice outlook to the world because if you just go about assuming everything is a Cremonaut, then it will make you absolutely despise your life. Um, and that's wonderful because then you will be very careful to not destroy anything. So yeah, those are the
I see.
Cremonauts.
Fascinating.
Yeah,
That's great. I really like that philosophy. It really ties in with the meditative, the Taoist philosophers out there. I really appreciate that
of
perspective
course.
for sure.
And the reason I'm saying these words are because I was told to. I
Um,
mean, I
because
am
you
totally
wanted
voluntary.
to. I
Yes,
heard wanted to.
wanted to.
Did you say what?
Yep.
Okay, I'm just making sure I heard you correctly.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. So anyway,
Anyways, I was going to
thank you
ask
for
you a
sharing.
question.
Oh
Right.
yeah.
Yes.
What's the question?
Okay. What is your world?
Oh, geez, what is my world? Well, that's the thing. My world has a lot of trees. It's
Oh.
a lot of trees. There's a good amount of trees. There's also a good amount of lakes. And my world is kind of like the landscape is very hilly. It goes down and up and down and up. There's valleys every mile. And there's a mountain every couple miles. Very, very hilly. So very few places to settle down and rest. There's also rivers. They don't run down the valleys, of course. They run through the mountains and the valleys, cross them. And they've just torn down everything in their path. And you'd think they'd run down to oceans, but no. They run uphill into not 3D space. They travel through the fourth dimension, in fact, higher in the fourth dimension. So actually, to a 3D viewer, the rivers just are just there. They don't even move. They don't flow. They don't go up or down. They're completely flat. Yet the water never cultivates mold or muck or anything like that. It's always perfectly clear, so you can always drink from it.
Wow.
And in this world, the grass isn't actually green. The grass is red. It's almost like my shirt color. It's definitely very close to my shirt color. The ground is somewhat more of a lighter tan, and it generally it's made of the entrails of that which has died on it. And that's the other big thing about my world, is that things are constantly dying. It's actually the only way it continues to proliferate, because no living creature in my world lives for more than one day.
Oh.
And there are people in this world. But they grow very, very quickly. Luckily for them, their middle age is a little bit longer than their young age and old age. Yet they still only live for one day. So there's been an entire culture built around these people who only live for a day. It's very different from our own. They write a lot of books. They record every person who lives, and they pass on those traits to the next generation. And the reason the grass grows at all is not because it's a plant and it grows because there's sun. It's actually that there's just there's so many things dying and fertilizing the ground that there's actually not much else to make those plants out of. There's so many things living and dying that it's the most prevalent substance. And so it ends up taking on the color, it ends up taking on the texture somewhat, and it ends up having bones as well. So as you walk around, you're crunching on these little bones of grass. They have two separate bones. They, one up and then one at a little angle. And you walk along and you walk down to the stream and you drink out of the purest water you've ever tasted. You only have a day to do it. So these people do a great job of living in the moment, I'll tell you that much. What else is that occasionally the sky comes down to visit. They call this a sky meeting, and most don't know what this is because they've never lived through it. They've only heard stories. They've only read recounts. And everyone reads these recounts as soon as they get born. They're reading a recount of the history of their people. And of course, they keep having to summarize this down and down so they can read enough of it in time so they don't waste their life in the day. But they eventually come to know the story of the sky meeting. What happens is you look up, and instead of seeing your normal sky, what appears in the sky is ripples. It looks like a cloth crumpling up, like when you like pick it up and then drop it, and there's like wrinkles. The sky wrinkles all across it, and you just see these perturbations in space. The clouds sort of clump up around these wrinkles, and you can tell it's instinctual. Just like when we look at someone's face and they're going like this, it's instinctually a message that it's angry. And what happens when this happens is the sky falls like a cloth. And when it lands on the ground, to an external observer who's safe, maybe below the ground, if they were to look outside, they'd see that you can't actually, there's no material there. There's no cloth material. It's just when the sky lands on the ground, it's still transparent. But when they look back at the ground, everything's blank. There's no life whatsoever. The grass is gone. There's only dirt. Every plant, every person, every living thing just disappears. And then the sky gets cranked up by what looks like strings on specific points, and it raises into the air. And what's left behind is a completely barren, completely new landscape. And the people who survive these things have to come back and repopulate. And because the life cycle is so short, the grass grows very quickly and trees start to grow from other things dying and living. And this cycle just has continued for millennia. And it's called Therese. That's the world it's called. They've named it. They wrote it down long, long ago in one of their oldest books, actually. Those people seem to live longer. They lived about a week, and they were able to write a lot more. So they hold those writings. They're basically their sacred texts. It's like a Bible to them. It's like their greatest history book. And so they make sure to read that one first and then further history lessons. But yes, Therese. It was named by the oldest of them, and they've built small villages there, and they've lived in the moment their entire lives over the course of a day.
Wow.
And that's my world.
That's an amazing world. I wonder how
Thank you.
they're producing books by the day. I wonder how they're able to consume books.
Well, they're not very long books. They can't be, can they?
I guess that's true.
Yeah. I don't think you could write that much in a day. So
True. We don't know how long their days are, though.
that's fair. I didn't specify, but I do want to specify that it's somewhat equivalent to our days.
Mm-hmm.
It's about 26 hours.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair. Interesting little community, then.
Yeah. Fascinating, right? Like
Yeah.
to meet one of them.
It would be so sad to meet one of them because you'd experience its whole life in a day.
That would be, that is kind of sad.
It's like,
in a way, it's
I
like
knew
it's
your
just...
great grandfather.
Oh my gosh. That I don't want to do.
You just have to be
Like
there for
me-
a couple days.
Meet generations, I don't want to do that. That is too sad. That's, I don't know. That's too weird. That was fun.
That was good. Alrighty. Thank
Some
you.
fun worlds.
Are we
I liked it.
are we wrapping this up?
Well, I think we're about wrapping it up.
Okay, I'll wrap up the recording first.
Let's wrap up the recording. Yeah.
Alrighty. Thank you for coming to Podcast with a K, episode, I believe, number 3, where we had some great talks. Thank you for participating in the chat, or if you're on YouTube, leave a comment if you want. Yeah, we'll see you next time with some more real talk and realer talk.
I want to say in the comments, I want to just throw some questions out there. What do you think the history of brain-machine interfaces is? What are you most excited about? What are you most fearful of? What watch are you most excited for? Is another one I want to see. What have you had experience with? And finally, what's your world? If you feel like it, I'd love to hear what your world is.
Yeah.
Thank you in the chat again as well.
Yes.
Thank you for everyone checking this out.
Also, if you want to illustrate our worlds, I'm just throwing that out there as a seed.
Yes.
I'm not. There is no should. There is no should.
There is no should. This is true. Don't
But
should
I
yourself.
would love you forever.
Same.
All right. Peace out, internet.
Peace out, internet. See you guys.